what I enjoyed studying seemed to be in the classes that an engineer would typically take in college. So it seemed like, hey, I should go ahead and start with engineering and go to a school where if I don't like it, I can change majors, and there's plenty of other options. And so rooming with a good friend from high school, it can be a good thing and it can also be a bad thing. It really kind of depends on the chemistry between two people. I mean, back in 2007 when I interned, I want to say I was making like $3,600 a month, which for a college student, that was decent money for me as a college student.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Wasim Asghar podcast. Today I'll be hosting an exceptional guest, Alex Lindemeyer. Alex is a senior electrical engineer at Oncor in Dallas, Texas. He has over 10 years of experience as a power systems engineer. He holds a degree in electrical engineering at University of Texas at Austin, and he's also a licensed professional engineer. Alex has led the way in developing innovative tools to enhance grid reliability, including tracking mechanisms for SF6 gas and deploying infrared cameras for hotspot detection. His contributions have significantly improved maintenance efficiency and asset management. Alex is also deeply passionate about mentoring young engineers. He guides the new graduates about the P licensing process, and he also actively participates and volunteers at multiple initiatives aimed at helping the young engineers transition in full-time roles at Oncor. In this interview, during my discussion with Alex, he shared a lot of interesting recommendations and tips for electrical engineers. Whether you are in high school, university, or college, a recent graduate, looking for a job, or even if you're already working and employed as an electrical engineer, you'll find a lot of helpful advice in this interview. So without further ado, let us dive into the discussion. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Wasim.
How's it going?
It's going great.
So, Alex, thanks a lot for accepting my request to do this, what I'd like to call as a professional career development podcast type of a discussion. This is a new series that I've started on my YouTube channel. And the goal is really to connect with folks who are in the industry working as professional engineers in the electrical power system space, so that we can get an idea of what the industry entails. What do you do as a power systems engineer? What your journey has been, and what others can do who are contemplating on making a career out of power systems. So I'll let you get started with a little bit of an overview of your academic background and the projects that you did along the way and how you ended up with where you are.
Okay, well, so you want me to start at high school?
Sure, let's talk about high school. I think that's a good place to start. Yeah.
So in high school, I usually excelled in all my math classes and my physics class. That was probably my favorite of my science classes. And it's not to say I was bad at all the other subjects, but I was just a lot better at those, and I enjoyed them more. And so, I think any high schooler, the hard decision is, what do I study in college? And for me, it seemed like, well, my dad was an electrical engineer, and what I enjoyed studying seemed to be in the classes that an engineer would typically take in college. So it seemed like, hey, I should go ahead and start with engineering and go to a school where if I don't like it, I can change majors, and there's plenty of other options. And so I had a few choices in Texas, and I ended up getting accepted into my first choice, which was University of Texas. So I went to school there for electrical engineering. One of the reasons I think I got in there, and gosh, it's so competitive these days to get into college anywhere, I think, or at least at the major universities. I participated in a program called Minority Introduction to Engineering, and it was just a summer program at UT for minority students, and I think anyone could really have signed up for it, but it just kind of introduced you to the campus, what kind of classes you might take, and it was just a thing I could put on the resume that would say, hey, I want to go to this school, and engineering is interesting to me, and here's some of the classes I've taken in high school. I took AP Physics, Calculus. I tried to push myself. I took a lot of AP courses, but I really focused on the math and sciences.
Alex, you recommend folks taking AP courses?
I would highly recommend it. Yeah, you can get a lot of credits out of the way. You used to be able to transfer grades and credit to universities, but they changed that. You can only pull over your credits now, as far as I know, because I think it wasn't fair to students coming from other like community colleges that were transferring into UT. They could only pull over their credits, and kids coming out of college or high school with their AP scores could could transfer both grade and credit. And it wasn't really fair back then, so they changed it. Um, but anyway, I think that taking a lot of those more challenging courses and the summer program at UT, those all helped me, I think, get into UT. GPA, rank, those, of course, help. Your essays, that kind of stuff helps. Um,
What about your
but
SAT scores? Did you work
I was
hard on
great on the
those, or
math part. I was great on
okay,
the math.
not so much
I
on
was
English, I
not
guess?
so good on the English, no.
Yeah, I heard
Um,
it's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, all my friends had higher scores than me because they did better on the English. I hung out with the nerdy group, and some of them were just, they were much better at the other subjects than me, but I somehow scraped my way in. Um, but yeah, so that, I think that's how I got into UT. I'm not sure if I would get into you these days with the same resume I had coming out of high school, but thankfully I got in then. At UT, some of the things I did is, well, one, I had a roommate that also went to the same high school as me, and we both studied electrical engineering. We had the exact same course load. The guy said he was a roommate already. We roomed together all 4 years, and we were study buddies. We were accountability partners. He's, I guess, as they say, he's my brother from another mother. Aditya, he and I, we tag teamed electrical engineering at UT, and it helped a lot to have him. And I think for him to have me, we both helped each other out a lot. Yeah, so there was that. That helped a lot. We both did is we took our in the summers we went to the community college near where we lived in Plano, and we got a lot of our electives out of the way. Rhetoric, government, any of those classes that were non-engineering, non-math, non-science, those are classes I took care of in the summers. That way, when I was at UT, it was all about engineering, math, science, and I think I did take some electives just that were non-math and science, but they were just like athletic courses, just like racquetball. So as far as actual course load, it was really more about math, science, and engineering. And that really helped my mind stay on the same track at all times rather than having to switch from.
If I just wrap up high school, go for the AP courses, right? And try and find your passion early. If you're good with math and physics, electrical engineering is a good option, right? We are not recommending here that everybody who watches this should opt for electrical engineering, but if you're decent with math and physics, it's a good option. And then in the university, one of the things is that you had a close friend and you guys worked together throughout. And I think a lot of people, I mean, in your case, you were, I guess, a little bit even luckier that you had somebody from your high school, so knew someone pretty well, and it seems like you guys were at the same wavelength in terms of your priorities, right? So that definitely helps a lot. Hang out with the right group, I guess. That's the message over here. And then in summer you were able to offload some of the non-elective stuff, so during studies during the actual semesters you were focusing on the core electrical and technical topics, so that helped keep your focus, right?
Right. Yeah, I think rooming with a good friend from high school, it can be a good thing and it can also be a bad thing. It really kind of depends on the chemistry between two people. I've heard some people that become enemies with their best friend, so it just kind of, you got to make sure that you really that you can study together, and that you won't have any you won't hate each other at some point in the future. But yeah, those things worked for me. They certainly helped me get through college, and I think we both ended up with pretty decent GPAs. I think it did ended up with a higher GPA than me slightly, but I think for the most part we both had 3.51 or 5.2, and he had around 3.6 or 7. But I think with those, doing well in math and physics, any of the engineering fields would probably be good. You just kind of pick what you think would be most interesting to you, or what kind of job do you want in the future, and then think, well, what major would apply to that job, and then shoot for that major. And if you're going to a big university like UT, OU, A&M, I mean, I hate to mention rivals, but if you go into one of those, there's going to be other engineering majors you can transfer into if you don't like electrical, if you don't like mechanical or civil or architectural or whatever engineering.
Right, and that's in Texas. Obviously, in other states, there are other very good schools as well. Now, did you have an opportunity during summers to do any of the summer work terms or internships or co-ops or yeah?
Yes, I interned at two different utilities. I kind of knew by my sophomore junior year that I wanted to get into power and the utilities, and so both of us, Adit and I, both worked at different utilities. He worked at Luminant at an internship, and I worked at Oncor for my first one, which is where I currently work. And so we both did about 7.5 month internships this summer and then the fall, which pushed our graduation back by a semester. But it was very worth it. Got a lot of great experience, made some money. I started putting money into my 401k. If you get a paid internship, the earlier you start saving for retirement, the better. That compounding interest will help. So
And were you able to easily get the internship? A lot of students, I understand that it also depends on the network that universities have, right? Some universities really promote it. Others are not so good. Even some big names I know, they don't really worry too much about internships, right? So how were you able to land jobs? Was it through the in job postings within the university or your own network?
at UT, they have this, and I don't know if it's changed, but I imagine it's probably still there. They have the ECAC, it's ECAC, the Engineering Career Assistance Center. So I don't know about other colleges within the university, but at ECAC, you can basically log in as a student and you can see what all jobs are available for internships. And a lot of companies will come to UT and say, "Hey, we have internship needs." And they'll post jobs and you'll have the interviews right there on campus. So bring a suit and tie and everything when you go to campus to be ready to eventually have an interview. They usually prefer students that are in their upper classes that have learned something they can possibly apply in the real world. But that's how I got my internships. I also interned with another utility, CenterPoint Energy, down in Houston. So I had experience with two different utilities. And one thing I always tell students that are looking for any advice is that, if you graduate with a degree in, let's say, in electrical engineering, in my case, and the other person, and then that person next to you has the exact same degree, and you both applied to a job at a company, but one of you has interned with that company, knows everybody at the company, knows their software, knows their procedures, knows everything. They're going to want to hire the person that has experience there already, assuming they did well in their internship. If they did really badly, then they may not hire them.
Unless they're blacklisted, right?
Right. If they blacklisted themselves, that's different. But if they did fairly well to decent, and they're going to want to keep putting effort and work into hiring the same person. So you put yourself ahead of those that didn't intern or co-op elsewhere. So because it says you have real world experience, contacts, and so forth. Even if you're applying to other companies, those other companies are going to look at your internship and say this person has real world experience at a competitor or at another similar company that they can apply at our company. So it's going to help you. And you get credit at UT for it. You get one credit for that.
Exactly. That's amazing, Alex, and that's what I exactly wanted to get out of this your internship experience because I tell students who are still in university that even if you get a job which just involves pushing paper or even grabbing coffee, you know, that once you get on your resume engineering experience, right, or summer work done or internship or whatever, right, at a corporate level the prospective employers are going to look at you as somebody who knows what 9 to 5 involves, and we're going to get to that. 9 to 5 does not always involve a lot of exciting stuff, right? Things do move really slowly and you have to get accustomed to it, the procedures and working with teams and interacting with different people at different level, right? So that is a huge plus if you are able to put that on your resume and earn some money. You mentioned correctly that, I mean, it helps. I mean, that you're not working for free. So even if that means pushing your graduation out by a few months or even for a year, I think it's well worth your time in the long run.
I mean, back in 2007 when I interned, I want to say I was making like 3,600 a month. which for a college student, that was decent money for me as a college student. I mean, it paid my, I stayed in an apartment nearby. It paid all my bills. It gave me some money for savings that I could spend when I was back on campus eventually. So it was just a good experience of just like, here's what the real world, it's what it's like to work in the real world. So
So let's jump ahead. Yeah, if you don't mind, let's jump ahead into your first job.
So my first job was at a company that it wasn't at the company I interned at. It was another company that built test sets for substation equipment. And so it was mostly an office job, but it involved a lot of travel with sales guys selling test equipment to utilities. There was definitely a lot to learn there as well. All the relaying concepts, protection, learning how to build a theoretical, communicating to the various relays and why we test them and how we test them and how we basically simulate different types of faults. So a lot of stuff that you find in the FE and the PE exams, it was there. It was applicable, So and then it also applied to my other jobs. Then making the jump from that company to the next company, I think I worked there for about 6 years or so. And then I felt like I always felt like I needed some field experience. I wanted to have some field experience because a lot of times I talked to people that would draw on that experience, and I didn't have that to draw on. And I felt like that was something I was missing in my career. So I changed to a company that would give me some field experience. Unfortunately, that meant a lot more travel. But I was young and single, so that wasn't so bad. And then I switched to another company that allowed me to do still field experience, but it was closer to home, but still a lot of travel. I eventually got married and had a kid. That traveling was not something that was feasible at that point. So I eventually found a job at Oncor. So kind of went full circle, started at Oncor with my internship, eventually ended up at Oncor now. And now I don't travel as much, just the occasional trip out to a substation, and very happy. And I think all of my other previous jobs helped in my current job, the field experience, the job with sales and test sets, working with people and communicating with people outside of my own company at my first company helped a lot. So I think all of them kind of built towards where I'm currently at. They were all great experiences. I don't know. Do you have any certain questions about, I guess, where I'm at now or the pathway?
Yeah, so one thing that I observe in your career is that you were pretty much in the driving seat most of the time. Whenever you felt like you wanted to learn something more or push your boundaries in terms of getting exposure to either field work, getting exposure more towards hands on troubleshooting, working more closely with different aspects of power system engineering, you didn't essentially wait necessarily for things to happen. You were assessing your profile, right, on a frequent basis, I would say, or regular basis, or at the very least you were aware of what was lacking in terms of your experience. So this is a skill that I think, or this is a trait that I notice in a lot of high achievers, right? That you are your own biggest and most honest critique, right? You're continuously looking at what are the weak areas and making effort, taking proactive steps towards addressing them. And every experience, you rightly said that, things that you did in your career, slowly and surely, they helped you get to where you are, right? So for some folks, they end up at their dream job, right, from the get-go. For some, you have to sort of take a little bit of different route, but as long as you are actively thinking about opportunities that are being presented to you that you can learn from, you are making progress. The only time that you don't make progress is when, at least in my opinion, let me know what your thoughts are, when you get too comfortable, right? That, everything is predictable now, and I know a certain task that I need to do, and I'll keep on doing that repeatedly until somebody asks me to do something else. And I think a good indication to assess whether you are getting too comfortable is if you are very scared, literally scared of change, right? If anything sort of changes and you find yourself getting stressed, getting anxious, that basically means that you were probably a little bit too comfortable. And maybe the externality, the external factor, you should welcome it, that it gives you an opportunity to do something different. What are your thoughts about taking really getting into the driving seat and pushing your career forward? And how did you sort of cope with the new culture, the new set of people each time that you were interacting with, the new processes, the new expectations, the new roles? So, what was your methodology to in terms of dealing with those changes, Alex?
Uh, well, one thing I forgot to mention before I get to that was I guess when I went from my first company where we were basically building test sets, then the next group of companies in the field work, I was getting to use said test sets in the field, which was kind of a great transition for me. And then last company, Oncor, now I'm working for the company that uses the test sets as well. But then also, I guess, in the transition from one type of job to another, in the first job, I was in an office environment. I was working with a lot of sales guys, so there was, the occasional conference and a lot of social settings, and so that was always fun, especially as a young person. And then the next job was out in the field, so less of the traveling to conferences and social settings with sales guys and everything that entails. You can imagine. But also then in the field, it was really more just like, okay, let's get this testing done. We have to hit these deadlines. We need to make sure we do this right. It was very safety focused. Not that the first job wasn't safety focused, but when you're out in the field and you're in a substation, you're certainly way more focused on safety than you're in an office environment sitting in front of a computer, because safety can save will can and will save your life. So there was certainly more of a safety focus there. There was no office environment; it was always pretty much on the road. And that was for both of my field companies, and they're both great companies. I think I learned a lot of things from both those companies, and the guys I worked with. A lot of the lead techs were either military backgrounds that had worked on nuclear subs, and those guys are some of the smartest guys I've ever met. And very disciplined, and they could just walk into any substation, look at a print, and know exactly what needs to be done and what order to do those tasks. And there's certainly an order of operations, and it's more complicated than PEMDAS, I promise you. If so, and then at Encore, I kind of found the kind of office environment I always wanted, which was, I wanted a big company where I could go play soccer with the people I'm working with, or go to lots of company events and bring out my family, my kid, and just introduce everybody and just kind of have like a friendship with those people, and maybe have the occasional drink with the people I'm working with. And I think I found that at Encore, with also still getting some field experience where I go out to the field and do substation visits for various purposes. So I still get everything that, I get the technical part. I also get a lot of the analysis. I get the field visits. I still get field experience. I get to meet a lot of the guys and help the guys that are actually out in the field as well. And I can draw on my field experience in my current job as well. So that's also there. So I think I'm getting a little bit of everything I had in the past in my current job.
Sorry for the interruption. Are you preparing for FE Electrical and Computer or P-Power exam? In the past, have you started your exam preparation and then stopped it because of a lack of useful and effective exam preparation resources? I've authored several books on the topic of FE Electrical and P-Power exams. Some of these books have the highest ratings on Amazon. I also run popular exam preparation program for both of these exams. The programs are offered in on-demand self-paced mode as well as in group live training settings. They're highly reviewed on LinkedIn, Facebook, Reddit, Amazon, and several other platforms. And here's a special offer just for our listeners. Use the discount code SFE10 at the checkout to get a 10% discount on all course plans for both FE Electrical as well as the P-Power exam prep. Visit studyforfe.com to kickstart your exam preparation and take the step towards your P licensing journey. Don't miss out on this great deal. Once you sign up, I will schedule a one-on-one Zoom call with you and develop a game plan based on your particular scenario. Thanks for listening, and now let's go back to the conversation. So let's talk a little bit about your day-to-day activities, Alex, in your current role and in your previous roles as well, and how do they live up to the expectations? Now, how close real life engineering as a power systems engineer is to what you were studying in school, and how did the school prepare you well or sort of ill prepared you for the reality?
I think what a lot of companies are looking for is somebody that can adapt quickly, learn new softwares, technologies, learn how to use them, and solve problems. So you don't necessarily like not every electrical engineer is designing circuits or or doing everything that you specifically learn in school. Some are for sure in utility, and some are doing things like, for example, for me, I'm doing a lot of analysis. A lot of times, I'm pulling data about lots of our assets, whether they're breakers, transformers, circuit switchers, and looking at how if they failed in the field, how did they fail, why did they fail, when did they fail, is there any correlation between those failures? So I'm looking at data like that. I'm looking at our procedures for safety with the rest of my group, and we're constantly looking at those safety procedures and saying, this is how we do something. Are we doing it in a safe way? Is this procedure still relevant to how we should be doing things? I'm working with our guys in the field on those procedures as well. Um, I'm coming up with tools for our use of SF6. That's the insulating medium in our high voltage breakers, because it's something that's not good for the environment when it leaks, if it does leak. So I'm looking for finding ways to minimize the leaking of SF6. So I'm doing a lot of tasks that weren't necessarily something I learned in in school, but one of the things I did learn was how to quickly you learn how to learn, really, I guess is one way to put it. You learn how to learn quickly and to adapt to a new scenario or environment. And so, for example, a new software I was recently introduced to is Smartsheets, and I've found so many ways to use this software to solve lots of different problems, to adapt a lot of my tracking sheets and automate a lot of things. And that's the kind of thing you're asked to do, is like, hey, here's a software, here's a tool, figure out how to use this to solve all the problems we may have. And some of those problems, your boss may say, hey, I have this problem, I want you to solve it. And some of those, I'm looking at everything my group does and saying, hey, this is a problem, this is an inefficiency, and I want to solve it. I often think back to digital systems with Moore and Mealy state machines, and how you do all those different types of charts. I know one that looked like a stair step, where you're saying, where are the steps that are unnecessary? And I'm often thinking of these real world problems in that with that mentality of like, where can I eliminate a step that really isn't needed anymore? And so I think it still relates. It's kind of, when you learn that kind of stuff, you may not think it applies to this, but it actually can relate to a real world scenario where you're eliminating inefficient steps.
Indirectly, not necessarily directly, but indirectly, everything helps. So, how would you respond to someone? And this is a common question I basically get from students who are just in the university sometimes, and even folks who have just recently graduated, or those who are just starting engineering, right? Or early in their career. A common statement that I hear is that, when it comes to engineering, it's not really a matter of grades. Employers don't look at grades, grades don't matter. I just need my degree. I'm going to do whatever I need to do in order to get the degree. And then, I'm going to start working and learn stuff on the job. So that attitude, you'd be surprised. I come across that attitude a lot. I myself was very keen about my grades, always try to make sure that, academically everything was up and up, always striving to, um, stay in the top percentile and whatnot, high school, university, graduate studies, and everything, right? In my opinion, I think my take on that is that when you yourself are working towards high grades and are able to achieve them, whether you are in high school, whether you are in university, undergraduate, or graduate studies, generally speaking, something can be assumed about your level of discipline, because a person who's sort of academically working way his or her way through shows at bare minimum that that individual is disciplined, right, can be relied upon, right? And for a lot of employers, I think that is a huge plus. So what is your take on the importance of grades, um, either directly or indirectly, to jobs? And
I think grades speak to somebody's either natural born knowledge or their discipline, or combination of the two. If you're already born and you're just easily pick things up, you may not need the discipline necessarily to learn those things. But if you don't have that ability to just quickly pick things up naturally, then you need that discipline in order to fill the gap essentially, and to be equivalent and have the same kind of grades as somebody else. But if you don't have the grades, and it shows in your GPA, obviously, then any employer that looks at your GPA is going to say, hey, this person either doesn't have the discipline or doesn't have the ability to learn very quickly, or if they didn't have the natural ability to learn very quickly, they didn't fill that gap by applying the correct discipline and work habits. So that's what it's going to say about that person.
That's a good way of looking at it. So, all else being equal, you're better off having good grades. And we both agree on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If you have two applicants for a job and one has a higher GPA than the other, and they went to the same university, and all things being equal, aside from the grades, you're going to take the person with the better grades. I don't see any reason why you would take the person with the lower grades.
Right. So now this applies to folks who are still in school or who have an opportunity to increase their grades, improve their grades. So, actively, our advice is that actively work towards improving your grades. Now, assuming that somebody has graduated and has already, started their career, got their first job and whatnot. So far, we've talked a lot about the technical stuff, right? Things that you have to do in the realm of academia in terms of hard skills. And in real life, the soft skills are equally important. In some cases, I find that they're at times even more important than the hard skills. So, what would be your advice for engineers? Let's say, hypothetically, somebody is introvert, right, and is not very comfortable in social settings and whatnot. So, how can they level up their communication skills, their writing skills, presentation skills, interpersonal skills in general, and how would you rate them, these skills, in the grand scheme of things in someone's career progression, even when you're working in a technical field?
Um, well, one thing is you just put yourself out there. I mean, the only way you're going to um, develop those skills or get better at them is if you practice them. So if you need to do that in small steps, do it in small steps. Get out there and just talk to new people. If like if you're single and you're young person out working. One way to practice smalling to or talking to small groups is to just talk to a single person, and a single stranger at a bar that you're just like, hey, let me just pick up a conversation and get comfortable talking to that one person at a time. Then, when you're comfortable doing that and just having a friendly conversation with somebody, then you can say, hey, you know what, let me sign up for certain scenarios where you talk to groups of people. Even it's just a small group, maybe 5-10 people. One thing that helped me in my first job was I was constantly going out with sales guys and I was presenting to them. And I don't like speaking in front of hundreds of people. Um, but I was constantly going with the sales guys and I was presenting our test set to like 10, 15, 20 people at a time. And I was very comfortable with that because I really knew what I was presenting, because I used it day in and day out. And I was very confident in that. And usually I find that for me personally, I'm confident talking to any number of people about a topic as long as I'm very confident in that topic that I'm talking about and I know it really well. For example, I feel like I could speak to thousands of people about soccer. I've played it all my life. I love it. I love everything about it. And so I feel like I could talk to a lot of people about that. When you know the material you're presenting really well, you can probably talk to anybody about it because you feel confident that any question they might have, you can answer it. So when you're not, you're going to feel nervous because you're going to feel like, well, at the end of this, there's going to be that question answer session. There's likely somebody's going to ask me a question I have no clue. So for me, that was always the nervous part. But I've tried to put myself out there more and more. For example, at Oncor, there's a group called NEDP, New Engineer Development Program. And I presented to them on the importance of studying for your FE and your PE exams. And that group has probably 100 to 200 engineers in it. And young engineers in my company, and I feel very comfortable talking about it because of all my recent experience, having passed both exams and become a PE, and put together my presentation that has a lot of the, I think, really good advice that I think it's helped a lot of those engineers already. I think some of them have recently passed those exams from either taking your course, Wasim, or another course, or just following some of the advice I've given them.
Now, we'll get to FE and PE shortly. And now, just to close the loop on this question, how do you think your soft skills, your interpersonal skills, your willingness to take initiative and connect with people and put yourself out there has helped you in your career, Alex, or career of others that you basically look up to? Because one common denominator that I've observed in my 10 plus years of corporate career was that the engineers who were at the top of the rung were the ones who were technically smart, right? They were smart individuals, technically very good. Early in their career they would have established themselves, proven themselves as individuals that can basically get the job done. But eventually, as they move up, a lot of that has to do with their soft skills, right? Their leadership skills, their teamwork skills, their managerial skills, their ability to organize people, their ability to get most out of a group, right? And that was a common denominator that I observed. So how has interpersonal skills, how have the soft skills helped you over the course of your career?
I think one skill that's also very important is being able to translate. When you're very technically savvy and you want to explain something to somebody who's not an engineer, and those soft skills will help you in explaining to the non-engineers, maybe the manager that you're working for or with, or in a project. It may not even be your manager, maybe a manager from another group that's asking you a technical question, but they need you to give them an answer in words that they may understand. That's not to say that they're anything about their intelligence. It's just that they may not have the same background, technical background you have. So you need to maybe create some visual, whether it's a graph or a chart that shows, hey, here's a trend that's happening, and this that will help you answer your question to get you where you need to be. So I often find that I'm putting together a lot of data and spreadsheets into graphs and charts that help managers make their decisions, without having to necessarily explain to them, here's this equation and that you may have never studied at any point in your life. They don't need to see that. Sometimes you just need to give them a broad, big picture. Um, and then sometimes, yeah, you can speak to other engineers with all the technical jargon that you want, and that works too. But you need to be able to speak to both, and sometimes translate from one person to another as well. Sometimes that helps when you're working with another engineer that doesn't have those soft skills, and you can translate to the person that needs the translation.
So be an effective communicator. Depending on your audience, you have to basically change gears, you have to shift gears and understand what the other person really wants out of this communication, right? About out of this meeting. And that really propels your career, right? And I know, knowing you over the last couple of years, 3 years, your career has gone from strength to strength. So let's talk a little bit about the FE and P exams that you just mentioned. So you started your PE licensing journey as most of the viewers probably already know that within the US, if you want to call yourself a professional engineer, you have to pass two exams. And these exams, generally speaking, most of the people would agree, are not easy exams. They require multi-month effort, right? So you started your P licensing journey a little bit late. I think you were 10 years, 12 years out of school, 14 years out of school already, right? So when you got onto that project, when you started that project and you finished it relatively soon, passed both exams, with me in the first attempt, how has your PE designation helped you? And we can probably just quickly recap your journey as well for the FE and PE.
Yeah, I think I want to say I started in September of 2021. I passed the FE in February or March of 2022, and then I passed the PE in July of 2022. I believe that was the timeline essentially. So about 4 or 5 months for each one studying approximately. Um, and I think that's pretty average. I think there's some people that do it way faster, and I think there's plenty of people that do it slower.
4 5 is actually still very, very, very good. A lot of people take 6 plus months to prepare for these exams, sometimes even longer. And obviously, there are always exceptions within 1 month, 2 month.
I think some people right out of school find they don't need to review as much. I've seen interviews of people that took like 1 to 3 months, and I was shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way I could have done this in that amount of time. But everyone should go at their own pace. I think you don't go on somebody else's pace. Everyone to each their own. But as far as how it's helped me, I mean, after I got my PE, I got I got a promotion, I got a raise. I started putting PE in my signature, in my emails. And outside of that, I mean, I feel like I already had a lot of respect in my office. I think a lot of people already knew what I was capable of, and I think most of them already knew that I was very capable of being a PE. I just hadn't put the effort into it for fear of the exams, and having a course like yours really helped me get past that fear, and realize that I actually could pass those exams, and clearly I did. So I think that uh, as far as respect in the office and everything, I feel like for me, it's like a placebo effect. In my mind, I know I'm a PE now, and now I feel like, oh, I'm getting that respect. I feel like I'm speaking on the same level as other PEs, whereas before I always felt like I was less than PEs that I was speaking to. Now I feel like I'm speaking to them as an equal. Um, but it's not like they're all of a sudden, calling me sir when they weren't before or something like that. It's really just, I just feel like I'm an equal, just because I know I have that license in my cubicle.
That recognition and that it is for real. So we basically, just to summarize our discussion, right? We started out with things that you can do early in on your career or in high school or in university to set yourself up for success for a career within power systems, right? Then you start your journey, right? And early in your career, you were actively looking for, and I know you still are, opportunities where you're growing, right? You never basically settled for something that was average in terms of challenges, in terms of projects. And when the opportunity presented that could help you improve your skill set, you took it, even if that basically meant that you had to get accustomed to some changes, because that's how you basically grow. And now you are at a place which I can possibly call as your dream job. You also have the credential under your belt, right? The PE license, you pass the FE exam, electrical in the first attempt, use my exam preparation resources. You also, and that's how we got to know each other. And you also took that PE power exam, passed it in the first attempt, and got the promotions and respect and, all of the good stuff. So this is a journey of an electrical engineer who is, you're clearly a very good student. I could tell, throughout your preparation for the exams, asking great quality questions. But you also combined that along the way with some good effective communication, with skills that you had to work towards, non-technical stuff, and that also helped propel your career, right? One thing that I think we should probably mention, and you alluded to it briefly, is that early on in your career, even if you're in the final year of university, it would be a good idea to get the FE exam out of the way, right? Because you started on the P licensing journey kind of late, right? And you had to learn or relearn some of the stuff. But it would have been a lot easier if you started end of your, undergraduate coursework, or when you had just graduated. Because a lot of jobs, Alex, and let's briefly talk about opportunities as well. When you look around, either new hires that your company is looking for, right, or the postings that they are putting out, right, or the general opportunities in the vicinity, P licenses gives you a relatively easy entry, right? It really puts you at the top of the pecking order, right? So, in the grand scheme of things, your career does get what I call a slingshot effect once you get the P license. If you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I know at my current company, we're always looking to hire new engineers. I know that and the ones that we have, we're encouraging everybody to get their PE. So, I mean, that's part of the reason why I spoke to that NEDP group, is to help encourage them. And some of them weren't really working towards it, and now they are. So I think that's the goal. You can't get past a certain title of engineer at Oncor without your PE. It certainly helps. You'll get more money for sure if you have your PE license. At Oncor, you get a yearly bonus for it. And that number may go up, I imagine, over the next few years, just so it can stay within what's competitive for the market for a PE. Um, so those things certainly help. I constantly am getting messages on LinkedIn from recruiters looking to hire, and I'm happy where I'm at. But that doesn't mean that I'm not listening when they say something. If I see something that looks that I can't pass up, then I'll certainly reach back out to them.
Makes your profile a lot more attractive. And is after you've done, 4 years of engineering, passing the FE exam becomes a little bit easier. It's still not an easy exam, right? And even if you just have the EIT certificate and you're looking for that first job, I mean, you'll be ahead of the curve, right? And then once you obviously have the P license, that's amazing.
And it's also important to just continue to network. It's as they say, it's sometimes a lot of times it's who you know. And so just making, trying to keep, make sure you have doors open, make connections to other people. I've maintained my connection to you, and that's been great because sometimes you have young engineers who just got their passed their FE or their PE and they're looking for a job. So just having those kinds of connections can be helpful. It can help me, it can help you, because our maintaining this relationship also helps me give good advice to other young engineers that are looking for a class of what class is a good class to take for their FE or their PE. I've tried to help a lot of these young engineers by providing them material from other engineers that have passed both and don't need their study materials anymore. So I lend them out to other people. So, and I'm sure they're grateful for it. And maybe sometime down the line, maybe they're my manager, and we have a great relationship already. Who knows?
Exactly. Importance of networking. Yeah, it's good that you brought that up. And something that you have to do smartly. For some people, it just comes naturally, like we spoke about interpersonal skills. Others have to work on it, right? So these are the small tidbits that hopefully some of the stuff resonates with the viewers. And regardless of whichever point in your career you are, it's a continuous learning exercise. We are figuring things out, right? As long as you have that mindset that you want to push yourself, continuously grow, continuously improve, you will continue doing amazing things in your career, right? But I think, in at least the final advice that I have for folks is that if you become too comfortable, right, and that leads into complacency, that's when you have to sort of push the alarm button, right? So be proactive, and everything else typically would take care of itself. What about you, Alex? What would be your final advice?
I mean, yeah, I think that what you said is good. Being proactive, and just kind of think ahead, think long term. What's good for me in the long term. I think too many kids are coming out of high school, college, are thinking short term. They're thinking, oh, I want to go to the college that where all my friends are going, or I want to choose a major that's easy so I can party a lot, as opposed to thinking I want to choose a major that will either lead me to a job that will support the type of lifestyle I want in the long term, as opposed to partying the whole time in college. And I'm not saying you can't party and have fun. You can. I did. But I focused on school. That's what you're there for, and also for your career, don't burn bridges, try to make sure that you're always keeping those doors open, making those networking connections and thinking what's good for my career long term. What's good for me towards retirement. Even sometimes you have to think about those kinds of things. So should I be starting in my internship? Should I go ahead and start saving for retirement now and just putting some money away? Those are if you think long term, all those other things will kind of fill in the smaller priorities later. But take care of the big things first.
Yeah, focus on the majors, and the minors will take care of themselves. That's great. Thanks a lot, Alex. I appreciate your time, and it's always nice chatting with you. Take care.
Always appreciate it. Bye.
Thanks a lot for tuning into this episode. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave a review. You can listen to this podcast on all major platforms. Feel free to follow us on all socials. Details are in the description. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comment section, and let us keep learning. I'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you.